Friends, you all know India, a land of a billion people, a million colors, a million food items. You heard of tandoori rotis and naans and whatnot. And a million gods as well. There are enough number of gods. We say each village has a god in India. Gods and goddesses, to be a little more gender sensitive in certain ways, because most of the gods worshipped in India are actually goddesses. It's very interesting to see the irony in which how women are treated in Hinduism, whereas the entire worship is of women in the Hindu religion. You see that it's a country with a lot of complexities. It's a continent of continents. Talking about 1 billion people, so there will be a minimum, 1 trillion views, and of course, 1 million problems. So the complexity of India is further seen in the way the whole Indian society is constructed. Giving you very basic statistics to tell you how complex the country is. Taking the case of some of the provinces or states in India, like for example, Andhra Pradesh, where you had heard of Hyderabad, the capital of Andhra Pradesh, has around 76.4 million people, meaning that it's bigger than Germany and Vietnam. And you look at Maharashtra, where Bombay, you heard of the Mumbai terrorist attacks recently, which is much bigger in terms of the population of around 85 million people. Friends, we are talking about the whole of Europe in terms of population is funneled down would be equivalent to 6 or 7 provinces in India. Well, that's how dense is the country. So, of course, we can say the problems excuse me. We can also say the problems are similarly complex as well. There are many ways in which you can look at Indian issues. There are triggers because of the natural, social, religious, cultural, political, economic. All these are responsible for triggering conflicts in India. Apart from the stereotype, the minute we think of conflict in India, we say it's India-Pakistan. It's much more than that. Because I think many a time the West likes to see the developed nations seeing eye to eye, and that becomes a big media. Of course, there is enough conflict between India and Pakistan, but that's not the only thing that need to be focused. There's a lot more issues that need to be seen, both within India and Pakistan as well. My presentation would be limited towards post-independence India, 1947. And I'll be looking at both the internal and external conflicts in India. The conflicts in India have been triggered by various pushes and pulls of separatist movement, the terrorist attacks, some of the groups which want to be completely separate from India and be part of Pakistan or be part of China or Sri Lanka. And the entire map here shows how the various forces within India, so the separatist forces, are trying to create havoc in the country. This entire conflict, you see, is primarily for the reason because of isolation. There are policies which have isolated certain geographical areas, and there is isolation in terms of religious minorities. So that has triggered conflicts because that has created frustrations and then have triggered conflicts. And the entire instability in the nation because of these conflicts is evident with the more number of youth taking up arms or getting into the violence as a means to resolve conflicts. And this is one of the serious concerns for us as humanists in India, is to see how do we stop the youth getting into the violent means. The intensity of the conflict is, interestingly though, is less towards the border of Pakistan or China. It's more down in south. You see on the map the northeastern as well as down to the south, where the Naxalites, the Maoist movement is highly active. So this is not just a cross-border issue, it's an internal issue as well, which requires serious consideration when we are talking about conflicts in India. Well, there is a laundry list of conflicts, but I would limit myself to certain key conflict situations in India. The major triggers are these. You would have heard of the word caste. I'm sure all of you heard of the word caste. We say caste is more complicated than the anatomy of a human being. We have got 4 castes, we have got around 800 subcastes. So it divides and divides. There is a hierarchy within hierarchy. There's an untouchability within untouchability. And that makes the entire situation much more complex, because the conflicts are not just between 2 castes. There are also conflicts between 2 subcastes. That makes it much more complex to handle. And the interesting aspect when you look at the caste scenario in India are the situation of untouchables, the so-called untouchables, also commonly known as Dalits. The Dalit population in India, traditionally, if you look at the original belief in India that Brahmins, the educated caste, are created from the forehead of God, and so are the other castes, and from the feet came the workforce. So in the original so-called creation of caste system, there were no Dalits. They came because of the kind of occupation they were involved in. And friends, there are around 250 million Dalits in India. That is another bone of contention for the isolation, the social exclusion, the marginalization is a huge issue for India to handle. And again, as I said, humanists have a great potential to work in India. The other aspect is the religious, when you look at. India has more Muslim population than Pakistan. There are more Muslims in India than the entire Middle East. That is the very reason India did not go into the war in Afghanistan. The reason is the minute if the forces go to Afghanistan, it would trigger an internal conflict which is not possible to handle. So you see the entire complexity of the Indian scenario is the kind of diverse groups that are there, the religions, the castes, the ethnic groups. So that makes it a country with so much of diversity, still trying to hold together. So the minute when somebody hears about India, we hear it's Taj Mahal or talk about Gandhi. So the more deeper you would go and you would see the kind of diversity in the country. So there's a lot more in India than what is portrayed in the media.